Welcome to this episode of One is Enough, the National Kidney Registry's official podcast. I'm your host, Michael Lollo, Good Samaritan, living kidney donor, and the Chief Strategy Officer of the National Kidney Registry. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing a surgeon who is nationally recognized in the field of kidney transplant surgery. Dr. Anthony Watkins earned his BA from Fisk University and his medical degree from the University of Tennessee. After completing his residency and fellowship training, he worked at New York Presbyterian Columbia, New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell, NYU Langone, and in November of 2021 was named the Surgical Director of Kidney Transplant at Tampa General Hospital. Dr. Watkins, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to One is Enough.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you, and it's good to see you. Hope all is well.
Everything is great. I'm so excited to have you here today. We've done a few of these podcast episodes now, and I hope none of those other people who I interviewed are listening, but I've been really excited to have you on. So thank you so much for making the time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So most of you may not have noticed that I missed one very important part of Dr. Watkins' professional experience. And I'm not sure, Dr. Watkins, I have to ask you why. I scoured the internet. I looked at your resume. I checked your LinkedIn, and I promise you, I did check. And as those who have continued to listen know, I'm a retired NYPD detective. But you have seen Mike Lollo naked.
Yes, and this I can confirm. And I've been meaning to update my CV, but I think it's on my bio on my Instagram profile.
It is.
If I'm not mistaken.
I'm going to check after this interview to see if you really have it there. Because for full disclosure, no pun intended, when I donated my kidney to a stranger in 2018, I was fortunate enough to have Dr. Anthony Watkins as my surgeon. And at the time, we developed an awesome, in the beginning, I would say, patient-provider, relationship, right? You would agree? Right from the start, I think we made a connection, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah, you were very well informed and, asked some great questions to make sure, you know what everything entailed with the process of donation. And I really appreciated that. And that I think it helped, encourage a conducive and long lasting relationship.
That is, yeah, I'm so fortunate to, I think, go from, provider patient to, I like to call you a friend. Hopefully, I don't know if it's reciprocated, but that's what I tell everyone. I know this surgical director, the surgeon for kidneys, and his name was Anthony Watkins. He's my friend. Look, I even show them my phone. Like when people show famous people on the phone, I'm like, I have his cell phone number.
That's right. You have the direct line to reach me 24/7.
And you always pick up and you respond to my text, so I do appreciate that. Did you ever think that when in 2018, when you cut the kidney out of my body so it could go to someone else, that you'd be sitting here 4 or 5 years later doing a podcast with that person?
Well, first of all, time flies. I didn't even realize it had been that long. But honestly, as you and I have had several events, so to speak, since that time, which I would have never imagined. The living donor outreach efforts that put us on Citi Field, for example, before a Mets game, was a very unique experience. And then, one of the moments that I, kind of look at as one of those very unique experience from a surgical perspective is when you came down and actually watched me perform the surgery that I performed on you. I don't think many surgeons have, had the opportunity to do that. And that's truly one of those, when I reflect back over my career, that was one of those cool moments, so to speak, to kind of have you there and, see how I did your surgery.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I was just showing the picture to someone of me in the scrubs, before we went into the operating room. And, I don't know. I can't say that I'm the only person in the world that has ever stood in the operating room and watched their surgeon who performed a nephrectomy on them perform it on someone else. But that's what I'm going to tell everybody, that I'm the only one in the world that's in that. It's got to be pretty rare. It was
got to be pretty rare.
It was a moving experience. I will tell you, It was a spiritual experience, just seeing how everything worked in the operating room. And, the surgeons get all the credit, but to be quite honest, you really didn't do a lot of the work. I think your team that was around you does a tremendous amount to make that surgery happen. The people inside the
Right.
OR and also the people outside the OR. And, the level of, professionalism. And as I'm talking to you about it now, I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit it. When the kidney came out and they moved it over to the table to get prepped for a transplant, I almost like shed a tear. It's transplant is like remarkable, and I saw it from the donor perspective. I've had the opportunity to see it from the patient perspective, and when someone receives a transplant, and to now see an actual nephrectomy happen and how it's removed and the care that's taken, and then put in the box with the ice and shipped off to where it's got to go. I would agree. It would go up into my very short list of amazing things that I got to participate in my life for sure.
Yeah, and I think, being a patient versus being an observer is a different experience, right? You go into the operating room, you're going to have the anxiety from the patient perspective. You're probably
Right.
not even really truly aware of what's going on around you. So when you have an
No.
opportunity to then kind of experience that through a different lens, you see, why the operating room, historically was called the theater, right? It is a performance, if you will. It is a team effort. It's not just me, the surgeon, doing the operation, but it's
Right.
the coordination of care between the anesthesiologist, the nurses in the room, and its success is dependent on everyone playing their part. But like I said, I think for me, being able to provide that experience for you, and even for me being able to show you, I think I'm glad you were able to experience that, particularly in your role now, because I think it
Right.
will be instrumental in what you continue to do from an avocation standpoint, because you have now both perspectives.
Well, we have a bunch of things that we want to
Yes.
talk to you about. And when I was talking with the team about having you come on, they were obviously so excited, and we want to cover a lot of stuff. But I think it's important to go way back, all the way
Way
back
back to the beginning.
back to the beginning of Little Watkins. When's your birthday?
September 2nd,
September 2nd?
I will leave it there.
Something or other.
Yes.
um, what made you become a surgeon? Was that because I remember having a conversation with you that you told me around the age of 8 and 9, like that's what you knew that you always wanted to do. So how did that come about from a little kid in Tennessee, right?
Right. Nashville, Tennessee. Really, it was two, I call, sentinel events that occurred around the age of 9. First, my mother had the idea that gifting me a human anatomy book would be something that I would want at the age. Just while I was looking for the G.I. Joe or the Star Wars toy, I never forget, she gave me this anatomy book. But, it was interesting that as I flipped through the book, I really had this instant fascination with the human body, the various systems, the nervous system, the anatomy, the organs.
Right.
And I just really was attracted to that book. In fact, I had a childhood friend that I later attended college with, and he even remembered, wanting to go play, right? And I was like, oh, hold on 1 second, I want to continue to look through this book. So that was the first, recognition for me that I had, this fascination with the body and how it worked. Around the same time, one time I had come home from school, and there was an article about my grandfather in this magazine called Jet Magazine. And it was essentially announcing his new position as a chair of surgery at Charles
Wow.
Drew University, which is out in Los Angeles. Now, for the audience, I have some unique family dynamics. So I hadn't actually met my grandfather at that time. I actually didn't meet him until I was a junior in college. However, seeing him, as a surgeon was really powerful. And it kind of, there was this instant connection, like, oh, he's a doctor. I like human anatomy. I want to be a doctor.
And what year was that, if you know what I'm asking about?
So I was 9. So that was like 85. Yeah.
So would you say there was also something about your grandfather, I'm assuming, is African American as well?
Right. Right. Correct.
So was there something about seeing, like, I'm sure you didn't see too many magazines that had an African American surgeon, in it. So did that have an effect on you? That to
Oh
that
yeah.
wow,
What I'll say this is this. I think that, we have a challenge with, a lot of physicians of color, right? And I think one of the challenges is you don't see a lot of role models. You don't see individuals who look like you who are physicians. So yes, not only in magazines, but around me,
sure,
this wasn't something that was commonly seen. And I often tell, students that I'm speaking to in regards to a career in medicine that, that played a very pivotal role for me, because in my mind, if my grandfather can be a surgeon, then I could be a
right,
doctor. I didn't know I wanted to be a surgeon, truthfully, at that point, but I knew I wanted to be a doctor. So that was a very powerful connection for me. And then, my mother and father weren't together. My mother didn't go to college. My father didn't go to college. So it was a very
wow,
interesting dynamic to have someone, that you haven't met, that's more, I won't say a distant relative, but it's not the one that within your house. So
yeah,
that you see that
right,
he was able to achieve, that success. And for me, that eliminated any doubt, right? Because there were definitely, negative feedback at various stages, but
I'm sure.
you couldn't tell me I wasn't going to be a doctor. So that
No
really
one was telling little
solidified.
Anthony Watkins that he was
No,
not going to
what
be a doctor.
happened? I was set.
Wow.
So
Wow. Did you you said you got to meet your grandfather when you were a junior in college. Did he get to see you become a doctor and a surgeon? Were you able, was he around, to share that?
yes, yes. Actually, it was interesting when I finally met him. I had already been accepted to medical school. And when I met him, the relationship took off immediately. Started attending family reunions on that side of the family. And as a medical student, I had the opportunity, which is really cool. I went to spent a away rotation at his hospital in his department.
Oh, wow.
Now, since we have different last names, again, very unique family dynamics, I kind of did that experience as just a, random
Anonymously.
student. Yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No one knew that at the end of each day I was driving back to his house. The rotation wasn't with him, but honestly, Mike, it was a great opportunity, to finally, after hearing about someone for so long, to kind of see them, in that work environment that you were pursuing.
Sure.
It was again one of those experiences that was very impactful, and I enjoyed that opportunity. So yeah,
Is he
he
is he still around, or did he pass?
yeah, he's actually still alive. He's retired.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
one other little story I like to share real quick is, there were a lot of organizations, as you can imagine, that really didn't include blacks within the medical field. So he and a group of other surgeons had formed a society that's still active and vibrant today, which is called the Society of Black Academic Surgeons. And he was the first president of this society. And what
Wow.
was really cool was when I was at Cornell. So the way this society has an annual conference that
Yep.
rotates at different institutions. So when I was at Cornell, we actually hosted this society. We had it for the first time in New York City, and he was there. So it was
Oh,
really,
wow.
that was one of those other real cool moments where I got an opportunity to bring something that he started, he played a part in starting back in the late 80s. Was the first president. Here it is, full circle. We hosted that in
Wow.
Cornell. So that was really
That's so
fantastic.
special.
Yeah.
That's really special. Well, I was, looking through all your stuff online, and I told you, I did a lot of deep dive research on Dr. Anthony Watkins, and I think I read somewhere that if you wasn't going to be a surgeon, that you might have been or wanted to be a professional dancer. And before I let you answer that question, I'm just going to let you know, I'm not going to say who. I saw a video last night of Dr. Anthony Watkins on the dance floor. And let me tell you, this is what we said. I'm gonna let you answer that question, but you know, God is an interesting person because he dumped a lot of good stuff on Dr. Anthony Watkins. Dr. Anthony Watkins is an extremely handsome man, very fit. He's a surgeon, and then you gotta give him the gift of dance. It is just not fair to regular, average, not good dancers like me. It's like I couldn't he give me a little something? He gave it all to you.
You're far too kind. You know, honestly, Mike, dancing is my first love, and this is why I'll say that because.
Good thing you didn't say that before my surgery.
Right. You know, here's the reality. Motown 25. I remember watching Motown 25 when it aired back in 1983. Now I was 7, so this predates the whole Human Anatomy book and wanting to be a doctor. And then when I saw Michael Jackson do that moonwalk,
oh my gosh!
Let me tell you, my life has never been the same. And truly, I mean, even just the entire performance, it was just so captivating. And from that moment on, I studied that man and his moves and had him down to a T. And in fact, you know, when I was throughout my education process, but particularly in elementary school, and even there was a couple of incidents in high school, I'm very known for being able to dance just like him. And I would have teachers like make me do his last day of school. Anthony, please come up and do that Michael Jackson for everybody.
And you're like, no.
Yeah, but it was interesting because truthfully, I was a very shy child. I loved to dance, but I wasn't really the gregarious individual who was out talking to people and things of that nature. But you know, yes, dancing was my first love. I've always felt that it brings a different level of kind of a flow state, and I also love music, so the two kind of go hand in hand. So, you know, if I wasn't a surgeon, then it's no question I would have pursued that, no question.
I just thought of something when you were talking, and you know, we interviewed Dr. Abigail Marsh and dove into the brain and, you know, Good Samaritan donors and things, and you know, you said something about people asking you to do the Michael Jackson routine, if you will, and I'm feeling that people got joy out of seeing you do it, and you enjoyed doing it because it brought joy onto people, right? Because you could see their reaction in their faces. And then you go ahead and you become a medical doctor and a surgeon, and you're still bringing joy to people. So I know it sounds crazy, and people are like, how is this guy making a connection to like Michael Jackson moonwalking and surgery? But I really do feel it's like you know, you're the type of person who would like to bring joy to people. And at the age of 7, and the video I saw yesterday, you weren't 7 years old when you were doing your Michael Jackson moves. You're still bringing joy to them today on the dance floor, but you're also bringing joy to, you know, to donors and patients by the work you do. So it's I don't know. Maybe I'm making this up. Maybe I'm reading into it.
No, 100%. I mean, even if you look at, you know, for me, I enjoy interacting with people. I enjoy helping people, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, surgery is just one, you know, aspect or one opportunity to provide that engagement and provide that service, if you will. But you're correct. And it's funny because I was actually thinking about this recently because, and someone had made a comment about, you know, why didn't you just do both or what have you? And they were also
dancing doctor.
Right. And we were also talking about just the impact of, you know, entertainers. And, you know, look, as a surgeon, yes, there's a problem, you fix it, and that makes a person better. But, you know, art, you know, entertainment, there's a different level of satisfaction and impact on people that you do have. So I definitely see the analogy.
Sure. You went to Fisk University in Nashville for your undergraduate degree. Fisk is historically a Black university, and we're recording this on the first day of Black History Month. And I wanted to ask, why was it important for you to attend Fisk for your undergraduate degree?
First, as a Fiskite, let me say Fisk forever. My fellow Fiskites know what that means. It's a very interesting story, Mike, on what inspired me, so to speak, to attend a HBCU. When I was in high school, one of my best friends, her father was a dentist, and I remember being at their house, and I really liked to talk to this guy and kind of just absorb his knowledge. He was an avid jazz lover, and we would sit back, and he had the jazz playing, and we just talk about a lot of stuff in life. And he mentioned that he had this demand, he had this demand or request for, he had $3, and he wanted all his $3 to attend an HBCU for their undergraduate education, and then they could attend a majority school for their graduate training. And the reason why he said is that, these environments created a unique experience where, African Americans are able to really connect with their heritage
Mm-hmm.
and their historical experience or journey in America in a unique and special way. And it really resonated with me because all my, educational schooling had been in majority schools. So I did like that idea. And truthfully, that's what inspired me to attend HBC. I only applied to HBCUs, and I ended up staying in my hometown of Nashville to go to Fisk University, and I'm very proud that I made that decision. It is a part of who I am. It's made me, who I am today.
Have you had the opportunity to encourage others to go to Fisk?
I encourage others to go to HBCUs. My son, for example, I have two boys. My oldest son is 22, and he's a senior at another historically Black college, University of Florida A&M, here in Florida.
Have you taught them? This is probably the most important question I'm going to ask you today. Have you taught them the moonwalk?
So my oldest son has two left feet, right? So
okay, all right.
I hope he doesn't hear this, but he wasn't blessed with the dance moves. My younger son, early on, I thought he had it, but I don't know if he lost interest. But no, they don't know how to do it yet, unfortunately.
That's okay. Listen, as you could, if you ever see me dance, you'll understand there's so many people that don't have the dancing talents of Dr. Watkins. But from Fisk, you went on to receive your medical degree from the University of Tennessee, and then you headed to the Northeast for your residencies and to start your career. You want to talk any bit about that experience?
Yeah. So interesting. I always wanted to kind of get to the Northeast. I was just always attracted to the culture and the environment of the North. I had the opportunity to visit New York a few times in college, and I just was really fascinated by the big city and all that it offered, from the museums, etc. So I did my residency training. Once I figured I wanted to do surgery, which happened as a third-year medical student, I was initially interested in trauma. So I attended Rutgers for my general surgery residency because it had a very strong trauma division.
Right.
However, during my time as a surgical resident, I caught the transplant bug. Really enjoyed the multi-dimensional aspects of transplant surgery. Patients were really sick. You had a huge impact through the operation. There was a level of medical knowledge and management that I found attractive. So being able to operate, but also tinker with the immunosuppression medication and address all the comorbidities. And then finally, kind of that rapport that you kind of develop with patients. So after my stint in New Jersey for residency, I did my transplant fellowship at New York Presbyterian Columbia University. I essentially spent the first 11 years of my career within New York City. And each institution that I worked in really provided a different experience that I've been able to bring now to my role here in Tampa to grow our kidney transplant program.
Well, we were happy to have you in New York for as long as that we were able to, and we were sorry to see you. I'm speaking for all of New York, by the way. We were sorry to see you go, but I'm very glad that you landed at another great transplant center in your new role. It's you have a great program over there. So you became a transplant surgeon, and of course, I'm a little bit biased, but in my opinion, a great transplant surgeon. And that's one of the reasons, of course, we want to talk to you today. But since this is, Black History Month, we wanted to talk to you specifically about the APOL1 genetic testing that African Americans have to undergo when considering living kidney donation. So I was hoping, since even getting the letters straight, I sometimes have to really think hard. APOL1. Can you explain in layman's terms for the millions of ordinary people who are listening? Not right now because this is being recorded, but when it gets put out into the ether, what is the APOL1 gene?
Right.
And what does it mean?
So the APOL1, which is is a short way of saying the apolipoprotein 1. It's essentially a gene that's responsible for creating proteins that play a role in immunity, our body's self-defense. Several thousand years ago, a mutation in this gene occurred in sub-Saharan Africa, and which this mutation was of benefit. It conferred protection against a parasitic infection that causes African sleeping sickness. So there was a benefit, from this mutation. It's really kind of, if you look at it as your body kind of adapted to its environment and creating ways to survive, right? However, around 2010, scientists recognized that these mutations also increase the risk of kidney disease. So the way we develop, or the way we inherit genes, is we get one from each parent. So we have the opportunity to inherit 2 normal copies, so just normal variants, so to speak, normal copies of the gene, or you can have 1 abnormal variant, or you can have 2. And for individuals who have 2, what we've now learned is that there is roughly a 20% chance of developing kidney disease or kidney failure in these patients. And obviously these are patients who are of sub-Saharan African descent. So you're talking about Blacks, Afro-Caribbeans, some individuals who identify as Hispanic, because obviously if you look at your 23andMe, you'll realize that we are a potpourri of individuals, of background. So that's in short, that is the APOL1 gene, and there's a huge multi-center study underway to really kind of get more definitive information and clarification in regards to, how these risks, interplay, and how we as providers can take this mutation and its various implications and educate our patients and still provide better care for them.
So specifically for donors, if someone is African American, is it an automatic that you test for that gene? And if the gene is found, does that mean they're completely ruled out of being a donor?
So in the field of transplantation, this has 2 implications. It's, first of all, it's the donor aspect, right? So there's a donor who wants to donate a kidney, and if they have these 2 variants, we have to worry about their risk of future kidney disease. And then on the recipient side, there's data that shows recipients who receive kidneys from these donors who have 2 variants have decreased survival. So from the donor,
and you know what? I'm not even aware of the second component. I'm just been focused on the donor side.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. So from the donor standpoint, there's a lot of variation in how transplant centers approach this. Right. A couple of key elements include obviously education. I think genetic testing is very important, right? Because we need to know what we need to risk stratify these patients to see if they have 1 variant, 2 variants, or none. And
is that just a simple cheek swab?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then finally, for me, there's a role for patient autonomy, right? So, and this is where it gets a little gray, right? Because, for some providers, the idea is, look, if you have two variants, you're at increased risk. It's a done deal. I personally, I try to kind of individualize the risk in combination with education, and then,
Sure.
and I try to collaborate with the patient on what's the best thing or what's the best steps to take. So let me give you an example. If I have a 55-year-old, African-American who has the two variants, who has normal kidney function, let's say he's even has high blood pressure, but he's only on one agent, small dose, and his blood pressure is well controlled, and he wants to donate, and he's really gung-ho, even despite
Motivated,
all the education we give, he understands the risk. I'm inclined to respect that patient's autonomy more so than, okay, if I have a 25-year-old who has the two variants, and even if they have normal blood pressure at this time, you still have such, because there's some data that shows the younger you are, the higher the risk of this disease progression. So I'm going to be very leery of allowing that patient to donate. But again, the good thing is once, there's a Apollo study that's taking place. Once we have more definitive information, then I think we'll be able to, provide our patients with a more definitive data to kind of guide their decision, their decision making and ours.
So I hope that there are other providers that will be listening to this. And then I just want to say, from a donor's perspective, I really appreciate what you just said, because you and I had a conversation when my wife was going through the liver donation, and everything was fine, but there was something that came up, and you said that you treat the patient, not the number. Right. And I think a lot of times what happens at transplant centers, there's 250 plus throughout the United States. They draw a very hard line on a number. So in this case, it'll be the two variants of the gene. Oh, they got two, they're out. They're automatically ruled out. And I really do appreciate that you take the totality of the situation in hand before making a decision, because it is the donor's decision, right? But obviously, as a medical provider, you swore an oath that you're not going to cause people harm, and these people are going for I hate to use the word elective surgery, but a surgery that's kind of unnecessary. And it's refreshing to hear someone actually, putting more thought into it than, the number is 2, you're out, and not seeing the whole situation. So I thank you for doing that.
Hey, there's other nuances to this issue, right? Because, African Americans do have the highest incidence of end-stage renal disease, and we also have some of the lowest organ donation rates, right? So we already, which when we're not donors at the same degree, that decreases our opportunities for good matches, so to speak, with organs. So, it is that background aspect, but like I said, it's very important to recognize if you take 100% of the patients who have both of these variants, again, there's only roughly 20%. So it's kind of hard to ascertain, well, which 20% is it? There's theories that involve maybe there's a second hit, et cetera. So it goes without saying, if it was 100%, then this is not a discussion. You can't donate. But because we have to kind of take all these unknown variables into account, that's been my approach.
Does this gene contribute to African Americans being 3 times more likely to have kidney disease?
Yeah, this is the belief, right? Because this is essentially how this was discovered, right? There was an attempt to really understand that reality. We know there's other things that play a role in kidney disease. There's social determinants of health, right? Where we live, our environment, our access to healthy food, access to medicine, et cetera. However, there appeared to be more than just those factors that were playing a role. And so when you look at the APOL1 gene variants, there's a spectrum of kidney diseases that are specifically attributed to this mutation, which includes hypertension for individuals that have HIV, related kidney disease, and then something called FSGS, focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, which is some scarring of the kidney. So there's really, for example, these spectrum of diseases that this mutation tends to lead to kidney disease and kidney failure in Blacks, increasing that rate. And in fact, I'll say of all the Black patients who are on dialysis, it's been estimated that about 40% have these two mutations.
Wow. That's a big number.
Big number.
Wow. A major goal of this podcast is to raise awareness about the staggering need for living kidney donors in this country and to hopefully normalize the conversation about becoming a living kidney donor. So, Dr. Watkins, as you've met many individuals like me and you've performed many kidney donation transplants both in New York and Florida, do you see progress occurring? Basically, are we moving the needle forward? Are we helping increase living kidney donation here in the United States?
Unfortunately, we are not. If you look at the data, the number of living donor transplants has really been stagnant for quite some time now. We had a little peak pre-COVID in 2019 when there were roughly 7,600 living donor kidney transplants performed. That number was lower last year, and the same can be applied to African Americans, and it's not really clear why.
I know,
but there's
I've been trying to figure it out.
Yeah, because look, obviously there's a wealth of we have a limited supply when it comes to the deceased donation, right?
Right.
So the living provides an unlimited source, but we just haven't been able to move the needle as a field significantly in this regard.
The National Kidney Registry is, I'm a little biased, of course, but I think one of the, best organizations for a donor to participate in because of all the supports and protections through Donor Shield and, participation with great transplant centers like yours. But I feel like what is happening is the National Kidney Registry is attracting the donors that would have just gone somewhere else. And the easiest example to use is non-directed donation. And we have a great program called the Family Voucher Program, which I've spoken about before. If you donate as a Good Samaritan donor or a non-directed donor like I did, now you can name up to 5 family members in case, God forbid, one of them ever needed a kidney, because that's a disincentive. But in the United States, it hovers between 350 and 400 people a year donate as a true Good Samaritan donor, right? So last year, 300 of them donated in the NKR at one of our 102 transplant centers. So we're not increasing that number. The Good Samaritan donations are still, dare I say, flat. And I'm trying. I've been racking my brain. I'm trying. If I had like $1 billion, I think I could solve the problem by. It's just. I think it's a matter of information, right? I think people just. I don't think they know they could do it.
Yeah, I think it's multifactorial. I think, education and awareness are always key. I do think there is an opportunity to increase our ability to provide financial assistance for donors, because obviously they have to take time away from work, not only for the actual surgery and the recovery, but even for the pre-donation evaluation process. So I think there's an opportunity to not necessarily say incentivize it, but make it where there's not a financial burden that donor accrues as a part of this gift of life that they're coming forward to provide. All right, I think so. I think we have to. And this is not obviously an NKR, but as a country, I think we really have to, critically reassess why the number hasn't moved. Recognize that living, as you and I know, living donor kidney transplants perform much better. They have better outcomes than deceased donors. So it is important to, optimize that avenue for those reasons.
Right. Yeah, we don't like to get political at all on this podcast, but I don't think the government as a whole does enough to help educate to solve that problem. And I have enough personal experiences where it's conscious that they're not promoting living organ donation because I think they're actually afraid. Again, you're asking. I think the government is honestly afraid to ask people to step forward for this. In essence, unnecessary, elective procedure. And like I said, I have confirmation on that because I've literally heard someone talk who was in the room where it happens. To quote one of my favorite Broadway shows, Hamilton. And I don't. There's only so much a National Kidney Registry can do, the National Kidney Foundation can do, the National Kidney Donation Organization can do. The government's got the reach, right, if you will. And I wish, and I try, with great people like Senator John Albers over in Georgia, who we had on the podcast, and there are other politicians who are speaking up more about it. We need to get more, state, definitely state and federal government involvement. And without that, I don't know if we're going to, really move the needle.
Agreed. But I think, look, that we will continue to push forward. We will continue to educate, raise awareness. And I think it goes without saying, while NKR might not have been able to increase the volume of living donor transplants, there's no question that, your organization's ability to coordinate the performance of transplants with better matches, provide access for those patients whose donors are incompatible, still plays a significant role in the outcomes, right? Because not only do we want to perform more, right, but we want to have improved outcomes, which prevent the need for, future transplants down the road.
You talked earlier about connecting with your patients effectively, and how not connecting with your patients is, I've heard you talk about this. It's just, unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. So what kind of impact has that had on your career to uphold this, I think very important value that you have?
Yeah, going back to what I stated before, I mean, I've always enjoyed engaging with people more so one-on-one, and being able to help people, right? And so surgery has provided, just an extension of that opportunity to do that in the medical realm, so to speak. But it's to be a great, anything you do, my philosophy is anything I do, I want to be great at it. I just don't want to be okay or average. And I think to be a great surgeon, your ability to connect with patients, your ability to educate them, make them feel comfortable, is important to me. This is just, from my compass, so to speak. And so I really take the time and effort to achieve that. And I think that it allows it allows me to be a more effective provider in that way.
So, you've already said earlier on that you're very passionate about music. You love music. And on one of your social media platforms, I caught a glimpse of your operating playlist, which I, of course, personally was able to listen to some of that while I was standing there. I guess one, how important is having the music in the background when you're doing these surgeries? And two, could you share a couple of your go-to songs during a kidney nephrectomy?
I am so glad that you asked question one, because I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. So let me begin. Before I answer that question, let me say, yes, to me, music is life. I think Stevie Wonder might have coined that phrase.
I think you're right.
But I enjoy all genres of music, with the exception of country music, ironically, being from Nashville, Tennessee. I don't necessarily care for that, but
we just lost our 10 country listeners. We had 10, and now
I'm sorry.
I'm watching the screen, and they just deleted our account.
But I mean, anything from classical to jazz to pop to hip hop. I mean, and when I say that, some people are like, oh, I listen to whatever. No, I have a playlist, of my favorite classical song, playlist of my favorite classic rock. And when I begin my transplant fellowship back in 2009, I started curating a playlist on Spotify. It's called Operative Tunes. It is a public playlist,
Really?
so your audience and you can access it.
I'm doing that.
Yeah, and to date it has over 600 songs, and it's funny. So at certain points of the operation, we have to pause the music due to timeout or do certain things.
Right.
But as soon as we're finished with that, if there's any delay, and when I say delay, I mean 10 seconds is kind of like the grace period. If we're finished with it and it's 10 seconds has passed, I'm like, can we get the music back on? And what I've learned, and Mike, honestly, for me, and I mentioned this before, it's about the flow state, right? So
yeah,
no matter what mood I'm in, no matter what time of day or night, once I get the music playing, I'm locked in. I'm focused. I'm good. And not every surgeon, there's a lot of surgeons who listen to music in the OR, but some people, as you can imagine, need it to be extremely quiet, right? So I'm just the exact opposite. I need that. I really like, I won't say I need, but I really like that background music. It just puts me in a good headspace. And yeah, I have everything from Katy Perry to Elton John to Tupac to Bob Marley to the Rolling Stones to Sean Paul. I mean, you name it. And what's cool about it is it just so happens that because I have such a eclectic taste in music that I've had the opportunity to work at, it's like my fourth transplant center. So everywhere I go, my playlist becomes, famous. Like everyone enjoys.
That's funny.
Because no matter what, no matter who you are, you're going to hear a song that you like, right? And when people hear a song that they like, it just creates a good environment. I mean, you witnessed it. I mean, you can confirm if or deny if I'm not saying it. But that's kind of my music thing.
So would it be a fair statement to say that if I downloaded this playlist on Spotify called Operative Music, I could start performing nephrectomies right away because it's going to inspire me? No, right? Just as a disclosure on this podcast, just because you're listening to Dr. Anthony Watkins' surgical playlist, you cannot perform surgeries, correct?
Right. You have to stay at a Holiday Inn to do that. And it's Operative Tunes.
Operative Tunes. I'm sorry.
Tunes. I just went because they search Operative Music. They weren't, Operative Tunes.
Operative Tunes. I have to write. I'm writing that down right now because I'm going to download it as soon as we get done with this interview. That's so cool.
Now, you let me know what your favorite song on there is.
I'm going to listen.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. But, do me that favor at some point in the future. Let me know, this or one of the, when it's new.
I owe you at least this one thing to go through your 600 plus song playlist, at least.
It was listened to when I performed surgery on you. I can guarantee you that.
Speaking of that, let me just, we're getting near the end over here. I want to say, as one of the, the few people who have seen me, completely naked, right?
Right.
I'm just assuming you were very impressed, right?
That goes without saying. I said,
"Oh, thank you,
oh my gosh,
Dr. Anthony Watkins.
What have I been doing? I mean, all this time."
Oh my God! And listen, just for people, it's a joke. Dr. Watkins is extremely professional. I think they told me I had, gowns and tablecloths all over me, so he couldn't see anything. But
no. Truthfully, the truth is actually donors are the when patients are getting prepped, oftentimes the nurse does that. So I may or may not truthfully see the patient completely naked. But
in my case, what you said, in my case, different. You're
donors are different. So donors, there, we do have to, because of the unique positioning, there is a requirement. So
yes.
Wow, Mike.
Well, listen, I'm glad
Mike and I go way
I was
back,
able to.
We got to make sure people don't misread this.
I'm just glad that besides my wife, I had one other human that was able to confirm that Michael's a handsome man. That's all. I'm going to just leave it. This is a family podcast, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yes, there we go.
Before I do the closing, Dr. Watkins, is there anything? Do you want me to ask you anything else, or anything else you want to come across? Or
I do want to thank NKR for having me and providing this opportunity to raise awareness in regards to this APOL1 gene, and also kind of talk about some of the realities with living donation, its importance. It goes without saying that ideally, we're also addressing the realities that lead to people having a higher rate of end-stage renal disease and kidney failure, right? So ideally, creating, ways to improve the social determinants of health, for example, preventing the need for transplant is also paramount. And I think that hopefully we can continue to not only educate in this aspect, but also address the preventative strategies as well.
Well, that is very well said. And I think we should probably end there because I don't have any more profound questions for you. So, Dr. Watkins, I cannot thank you enough. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. And on behalf of One is Enough, NKR, myself, we want to thank you for your dedication to transplant surgery and living donation. And of course, I want to thank our dedicated and growing listening audience. We hope that you learned something new in today's episode and that it empowers more individuals to consider living kidney donation. If you're looking for more information on living kidney donation, or you'd like to start the process of being screened as a potential donor, please visit kidneyregistry.org. And you can find Dr. Anthony Watkins on social media and Instagram and all that stuff. I think it's actually under your real name, right? Anthony Watkins?
A. Watkins.
You got to go to his Instagram. He's got really good stuff. Dr. Watkins, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
You can learn more about the podcast by visiting kidneyregistry.org/one. When you're there, you can sign up to be on our email list so that you'll be the first to know when we drop a new episode. And trust me, you want to be the first to know.